Hey guys, welcome to my computer reassembly disassembly video. I'm going to start by assembling my computer and then disassembling it. First up, we start with the parts. This is the motherboard. The motherboard houses everything that goes in the computer to make it run, as well as holding all the cables, and all the cables connect to the motherboard. After that, there is the processor. I've got an Intel processor, you may have an AMD one. Now with the processor, it is the brain of the computer. It tells everything what to do, and along with the processor there is a heatsink. Now the heatsink is what keeps the processor cool. Beyond that are what we call RAM sticks, random access memory. Now these sticks house memory on them, and they are the fastest way to house memory that is readily accessible for the computer to read. The other kind of memory is hard drive or solid state drive memory, which is where you store all your information from your computer. The difference between the two is when you turn off the computer, anything that is stored in the random access memory will be lost. After our random access memory, we come to our graphics processing unit, or graphics card for short. Now if you wanted to play any high depth games or anything like that, you'd need to buy one of these. That's purely their source as to run those high depth games. After your graphics card, as I stated before, solid state drive. That's what I have in my system, but you may have a hard drive or a combination of both. As I said, the solid state drive is for housing memory, so any files or any games or anything that you install will be housed on this. Furthermore, after that we come to the optical drive, or a DVD drive. So you'll stick your CDs in the front, close it up, it'll play your DVDs, and you can read and write onto the DVDs or discs that are in here. Once we get past all that, the final product is the power supply. Now your power supply, as it states, will power everything in your computer to be able to run it. It also connects to the wall, so that's where your power comes from to go into your power supply through your system. Last but not least is the case. Now this is the size of case that I've got. You may have a bigger one, you may have a smaller one, you may have one of a different colour, but this is the one that I went for. We have two fans, one is at the back here, right at the top, and one is in the centre at the front. Those are cooling fans. Alright, now we start to build. So the first thing you want to do is you want to grab your motherboard. Now if you haven't installed them already, there are little grommet holes. You need to line them up with the holes on your motherboard, which I've done so already, so I will place this into my system. Awesome. Now before you start building, you are going to need a screwdriver, you're going to need a rag. I have isopropylene alcohol, but you are going to need something to clean with, and you will need some thermal paste, and I'll let you know why later. So I'm just going to screw this motherboard down with the 6 screws that it has. Now with the motherboard you have to be really careful that you don't damage the front or the back of it. You don't want to damage any of the parts that are in your computer, but you want to be especially careful with these because it has a lot of aluminium or copper foil over it, and if you damage those, things aren't going to be functioning as well as they should. Now you don't need to do up the screws too tight, but tight enough to not have everything move around for you. At the same time, you want to make sure that this PCI Express slot lines up with one of these, otherwise you won't be able to stick your graphics card in. Alright, so now that we have the motherboard in place, next step is to install the processor, which is this little piece here again. So for my processor, there are two indents on the side which will link up with the indents on the socket. Now to open the socket, open the cover on the socket, sorry, you will grab the tab, pull it down and just bring it out. Now when you lift it up, it should fling back on you, and you carefully line it up and place it in the gap. Give it just a light press down and bring that cover back down, and when you pull this, there is quite a bit of tension, so don't worry, pull it right down and pull it back under. Now that we have the processor put in, we need to apply a little bit of thermal paste. This is to make sure that the metal parts of the processor as well as the heatsink don't rub on each other and cause damage. Once that is done, we now have to apply the heatsink. So the heatsink will just sit over the top like so. We push down on the screws so that they sit into place correctly. So now that the heatsink is down, and you want a flat head on your screwdriver, which I'm going to swap over to now, to close and lock those pins. As you can see, just a small turn as I lock them up. Just a small turn to lock it in. One more. Now my heatsink's not going anywhere. Now that the heatsink is in, I will plug that in over this end, as that is where the heatsink fan should be plugged in. Now following that, we come to our RAM sticks. Now our RAM sticks go on these slots here, and as you can see, there are grommets that you push up and they fit in the correct way. So with a firm press down on both ends, they will slot in and the grommet will pull back to let you know that it is in correctly. I have two of them, so I'm going to do that for both. Yeah, that is our RAM installed. Next up is our graphics card. So our graphics card will go in this slot here, and it is simply a matter of placing it in. I will just go and move my static band so that I can pop that in there. Alright. So we line it up Make sure it's all nice and flush. Press firmly down and it locks into place. We secure that with a screw. We just need to pop the Phillips head back on. And I've used the wrong screw. Bear with me one moment. Go with the bigger screw and secure that to the case. Now that our graphics card is installed, we next need to put in our solid state drive. Now I'm going to connect up the cabling to my solid state drive first, just to make it easier to stick in later. So that is a SATA cable, that's a power cable, but the SATA cable looks exactly the same. I will plug that into my solid state drive, as you can see there. And because I don't have a bracket, I'm going to mount it to the bottom of my system. Bear with me while I just get this put in. This is just taking a little while. Yeah, that's not going to work. It is much easier if you can mount it into a bracket, but because I don't have a bracket, I need to mount it down here. There we go, that's one. That's two. Doesn't want to go in. That's three. And if I tighten up these other three, the fourth one should go in nicely. that's for. Alright, now that that one is in, we can go ahead and insert the optical drive, which if I take that one out, I can insert it into the top here, making sure it is the right way round, and it just slides on in. Make sure that it is flush with my system before popping that back into there to lock it into place. Now it's not going to go anywhere. I'm going to put my next SATA cable in as well, so I don't have to do it later. Sweet. Now that all of those are done, next step is to connect our power supply. The power supply is one of the bulkier units. And generally it goes in the bottom of your system. And I'll just move my counter again, my static charge piece to there. Slide it all the way back, and that's not in properly. There we go, that's in properly now. 4 screws holding this one in. The reason why we put the power supplies in last is to avoid electrocution. So we'll just tighten these up. Do them up finger tight, and then grab our screwdriver, tighten them up properly. Right, now for the fun part, the bird's nest that is the cables. So what you want to do is you want to take your HD audio, and depending on your manufacturer's specs, you will have to stick it in whichever slot that you can fit it in. So mine fit into those. Grab my fans, plug those in. Those are in. Make sure that they are out of the way of any moving parts. Now that those are connected, we can connect up our SATA cables. So plug those in like so. So that's all of those connected. These are the hardest ones to configure unless you've got them shown quite easily. My ones aren't too bad, so I can go and stick those in the way that they are supposed to. Usually they will be down here, so try and keep them the same spot roughly. Next is the HDD LED. It says on the motherboard where they should go. Most motherboards should show where they do go. Power button goes up the top and reset goes underneath. So power up the top and reset underneath. Stick those in there. Should be right. Alright, brilliant. Next to connect up is going to be our power cable, which goes in right there. Have to connect together. So these two pieces connect together. The 4P and the 20. There we go. And that gets plugged in up over there. Make sure it's nice and tight, it's not going to come out. Nope, I'm a little bit stuck here. My GPU cable goes in just here, clips in, bend that down so it doesn't come out of the case. CPU cable, and I've got myself tangled, so I will just move that over to here. My CPU cable goes up here. Oh, hitting my cameraman there. That should just go and slot in nicely. Yep. So we've got our GPU cable, our CPU cable, our power cable in. We need to put our rewritables in. That's where I'll move this cable out of the way. My SSD cable goes down here like so. Now I do have a bird's nest of cables here, but at the moment that's as good as I'm going to get it. SSD cable going in. Sorry, optical cable going in. So now that everything's plugged in, we should be ready to close her up and get her going. That's fallen off, that's okay.
Yeah.
Now we have two side panels. It doesn't exactly matter which one goes on each side because they do have ventilation. Sometimes they do. Just refer to your PC itself. It should tell you. That may help. That is a bird's nest of cables, as I said, but yeah, I don't have the size to be able to manage that. I can take this off now. Now it's just a matter of screwing these in. Now we want to pull it up onto its top. Put the other side in. carefully as we can. Alright, that should be us. Now I will plug in the power, which usually goes in the back here. Flick that on. Turn it on at the wall, and she should turn on. Hey there, sorry my camera died, so I'm back at it now. I did a little bit of troubleshooting since it wasn't going, and I found that I had placed these 4 slot bits right here. They were around the wrong way, so the positives were going to negatives and the negatives were going to positives. Again, refer to your manufacturer's specifications when it comes to those things. That's come out as well. Oh, that's good. Okay, that's in nice and tight now. So yeah, refer to your manufacturer's specifications when it comes to your power buttons and all that. So now that I've sorted that out, let's see if she works. So we'll close her up again. Pop our screws back in. You only need to finger tight these. Alright, check that our power is off. Yes, it is. So we can go ahead and plug our system in. Nice and tight. Connect our peripherals, which is HDMI. Now I'll go and turn it on and start the computer. Now, that may also help, turning on the computer behind it. As you can see, she's running. The monitor has started to turn on, so I will plug in everything else I need, which is Ethernet, access to the internet, my mouse and keyboard are over here, and I will plug my keyboard in because my mouse has a slot to my keyboard, so I can just plug the keyboard in and it does both. So now my mouse and keyboard are working. My computer is turning on. And now I can access the internet. That has been my computer assembly. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.